Hey, hey, Lacey here. Welcome back to another episode of the Rancher Way podcast. Today, we're releasing a podcast that was recorded on May 20th. So as of the release date, it is a tad bit outdated. We cover a topic that is fairly controversial here in Canadian agriculture right now. And so keep in mind that since the date of this recording, there has been some updates from the CFIA. And it is my understanding that they've agreed to put a pause on the proposed regulations and the implementation of them. So enjoy this episode as we converse with one of the leaders in the ag industry, a rancher and a producer himself, and we will see you on the other side.
Right now, we just played a clip of an interview, a quick little blip from what played in, was it April? Was it late April of 2026? There was an interview that you and Mary Jo had with Lacey. And in that short clip of a 13-minute interview, it created 50,000 views from that one question that Mary Jo asked you. And it was based on a heated conversation. And so today, we're having an extended conversation, a deeper dive of a conversation that we're genuinely curious about because it really sits tight at the intersection of really two different things that our show really cares about deeply in how ranchers stay in control of their operation and what's happening right now in the Canadian cattle industry that's making that a bit harder. So, Chad, you spent the last several months in the middle of one of the most talked about issues, maybe it's probably more than months, in the Canadian agricultural industry. Before we get into all of that, though, just tell us who you are and what your operation looks like today.
Yeah. Good day, ladies. Yeah, my wife, Crystal, and I, we ranch at Estevan, Saskatchewan. It's a fourth generation ranching operation that was started in 1906. And we have cow-calf backgrounding feedlot. And yeah, my parents, they have a separate operation. They ranch just down the road from us 4 miles. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
The whole spark of this conversation was from a question that Mary Jo asked me when I was visiting her. And I really don't even feel like I was qualified to answer that question in depth. And I did say to her, I don't know a lot about this, but I know that the backlash is the fear of control. And we need answers. And that's kind of, I didn't want to speak too much to it because I don't know all the details. I just know what I've talked to other people about. And here we are today. Yeah, and who knows why that reached so many views, but it did. And we felt like, let's follow up.
For sure. And, we thought we'd follow up with you, Chad, just based on your experience. And before we get to your experience in the agricultural world, just to ask a little bit further about, in terms of your operation, is it all just beef production?
Yeah, we put about 1,000 head cow-calf operation, and we farm about 2,200 acres. And in our farming operation, it's all for feed. So we have a 3-way rotation made up of corn, barley, and then the barley is underseeded to clover and rye, which comes up the third year, which we all silage. So that's all used for feed. And then we also use the byproducts from that farming operation to keep our cows out on the land throughout the winter, cheapen our feed costs, and that's our number one expense is feed here in Canada. And so any way that we can cheapen our feed just makes sense financially for our business.
Absolutely. And so definitely you and your family grew up in it and you're really cattlemen first. You're also known as Chad Ross Canadian-wide, and from what I understand, you are the chair of the Saskatchewan Cattle Association, representing 18,000 cattle producers across Saskatchewan. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you're not pro-CFIA regulation, and in fact, you're one of the first association leaders in Canada publicly to call for a halt to proposed traceability amendments after they were released in December of 2025. And you've also hosted 4 town halls between 150 to 250 producers each to gather feedback from producers, then help to take that feedback directly to the provincial minister and national beef organizations, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Super active.
We're one of the first to call for a halt to the regulations, and And then we did do a series of town halls across the province. We did 4 town halls as well as I did attend other meetings that were formed that weren't SCA related, just to hear producers' concerns. We heard loud and clear that regulations were something that our cow-calf producers were pretty scared about, and that we've got a lot of producers that have lost trust in our regulatory body. And through the TB investigation and just government in general, our producers are pretty worried about more regulations on them. And so they were very vocal telling us that in those meetings.
What do you do with that information?
Yeah, so our board then took that information, and then we did come out with a statement saying that we do not support the proposed regulatory amendments. And then we did take that to Ottawa, where we met with other members of the Canadian Cattle Association, and we told the story that our producers told us, that they're very concerned about a lot of things with these regulations. They've just lost trust in a regulatory body. Also, technology and the tags that we have. There's some problems with them not staying in. We've got to get up to date on our technologies. There's lots of technologies out there, and there's traceability around the world, and better traceability around the world than what we have here in Canada. We can look at those other ways of doing things that can make it less onerous or not onerous on our cow-calf producers. And so, yeah, we told the story there to CCA. We told the story. CFIA was in the room when myself and other people from Saskatchewan got up and told our story. We were leaders in the room that day as far as let's take a look at these regulations. And CCA then did follow suit, saying that they did not support these regulations and that a task force would be formed to look at ways that traceability can be done. That's industry-led traceability. And we still feel traceability is important for our industry, but regulations is something that our producers don't like.
Let's take it back like way back, like I'm 5. Why do we need traceability? Maybe there's somebody listening that's new and a new producer, maybe.
Yeah, that's great. We get that question a lot. Why traceability? Why more traceability? Why, we got great traceability. Why do we need more? And I view traceability as a 3-legged stool. And so the first leg of that stool is our tags, or our identification of the animal. Okay. And we have that. We've had that for over 20 years to identify the individual. The second leg of the stool is premise ID. So that's the identification of the premise where the animal is at. In Saskatchewan here, we do have mandatory premise ID, so that's already in place. So we have 2 legs of the stools that are in place. Granted, the first leg needs a little bit of work on technology and that type of thing, and benefits for our producer. The third leg of the stool is animal movement, and that's where we track the movement of each animal through its life cycle. And in the beef business here in Canada, animals can move from different operations to different parts of Canada very freely, and an animal may see a lot of different operations in its lifetime. So we have a certain amount of animal movement right now, especially here in Saskatchewan and in Alberta with brand inspection. We can trace through group movements and that type of thing with brand inspection. We're just looking to fill some gaps with traceability as far as the individual wise, and being able to have rapid trace back to an individual. And why do we want rapid? Any of us that's been through BSE and that type of thing, and having the borders closed, it was detrimental. It took me a lot of years, Crystal and I, to repair from that day in 2003. And we were just new to the industry, so just young, and it was very hard on us. And so to have the borders closed is very detrimental to our industry. And we've got to be able to isolate that disease fast. And maybe we can isolate to just a portion of Canada, or just a small portion of where the disease is, so the rest of the country can resume trade or keep trade going. And that would be ideal if we could do that. So, but that takes a rapid identification and be able to isolate that area. The other thing to remember is that in Canada, we export 50% of what we produce. So
that's what I was just going to get at.
Yeah. So if that border closes, 50% of us need to go away, because we can't eat our way out of it. We have to have export markets. We have to keep that border open.
Where like the the US has a big enough population that they don't have to rely on export. So here in Canada, we're only consuming, did you say 50%?
That's right. We've had that comment as well, that the US doesn't have this. And yeah, no, they don't, but they don't rely on trade like we do. And they can eat their
They
way
have
out
a
of the
lot of
problem.
things we don't.
Yeah. And
Well, so
you know,
if I may, so I'm not in the industry. I didn't grow up in the industry at all, but I get to enjoy what it's like sitting down when I go out to the restaurant, or if I go out to a grocery store and pick out my steak, or if I want to go eat at steak. It brings me comfort knowing that there is regulation or traceability, so to speak. So in case something happens, like you said, like BSC closing that border down, but what if I get sick? If I'm just selfish enough to think, what about me? How does this impact me as an individual buying the meat or eating at a restaurant? It matters to me that I know that I'm being served or what I'm buying is good.
yeah, well, and that's a great example, Winnie, of we need a regulatory body. We need CFIA to regulate our processing. We need CFIA to regulate other things in our business to keep we've got a safe product here in Canada, one of the safest in the world. And we need to be proud of that. And that's why we do need regulatory bodies like CFIA to regulate those processes.
The proposed regulations, how are they different from the CCIA tags that we put in now? I know those are for traceability, but does it produce a more rapid isolation?
So the proposed regulatory amendments are just what that says. They're amendments to the regulations already in place, where we are required to tag our cattle before sale. And it's a bookend system, and then they're retired when they're slaughtered. And so that animal is tracked from the herd of origin, and then to when we're processed, or either that or they die and we retire the tags. And so what the proposed regulations are doing is just filling that in the middle. And so they're just adding some movement tracking. Now, when CFIA came to the industry, that's 15 years ago, maybe even more. They said to the industry, we want a traceability system where you track in, you track out, you do, this, you do that. And the people at the table at that time, that was long before me, but they said, whoa, no, you can't impede commerce within our industry by having it that onerous. There was a lot of negotiations throughout that time period, and a lot of it was settled on just trace in. So in Alberta, our feedlots have been tracing in now for 10 years. So they've been required to scan their cattle in as they buy them from the cow-calf guy or the yearling guy. And they are required to upload that to the CLTS. And that's been going on. Any feedlot over 1,000 head is required to do that in Alberta. So that's part of what has been proposed. Now, the big gap we have is with cow-calf producers. And what's been asked of them is that they trace in. So if you buy a bull, or if you buy bred heifers or cows, that you read those tags or write the tags down, and that somehow gets uploaded to the CLTS. So there is a tracking system that those cattle have arrived on your operation. You're not required to trace out. So you don't have to scan your calves out. They just go. Right. And as long as they got a tag in, you're meeting the requirements of the regulations.
What has been the results of disease control or management since Alberta started tracing in those cattle in feedlots? Have you seen an improvement?
The traceability system kicks in if we have a reportable disease in Canada, for CFIA to be able to report that disease. Now, the feedlots do use that as a tool. So they scan the cattle in, and then that is a tool that they use in the feedlot for every time they run through and implant them or revaccinate. They'll scan that. If they're treated or whatever, that tag will get scanned. So it is a tool that they use at the feedlot.
Okay, so what I'm hearing from this conversation so far, there's two different main issue here is traceability, and then there's regulation. And it sounds like maybe perhaps the reason why this is such a hot topic, so to speak, everyone's got their own opinion about it. And it's also whatever the regulations are, it sounds like it's really super annoying to the producers, I guess, for lack of better words. there's quite a few producers who have lost trust in the CFIA because they don't feel heard. And I mean, as humans, we all like to feel heard. Sometimes being heard and then getting what we want, I think are two different things. And I only say that because I'm like that in my own relationship. Like, it doesn't matter if it's with a friend or if it's with my partner or my daughter. It's like, if I feel heard, I don't care if that person actually agrees with me. But if I feel heard, I feel good.
Yeah. That clip with Mary Jo, there was over 700 comments on there. So it wasn't even possible to get through all of them. But the main theme was no more control. And I think after the whole COVID thing, everybody felt everything you did was controlled. And I would say most of society feels like every time we turn around, there's just another piece of control, not necessarily as beef producers, but just in life in general. So the big question and concern that most people have, and even my husband, when I was chatting with him about, hey, we're going to do this podcast, what are your thoughts as the rancher? And he's just like, how do we keep this from turning into something where we have to ask permission to do everything? And I think that's the huge concern because everybody knows everything about us anyway. If we're on the internet, we have that stamp footprint. A lot of people, they just want to go back to a landline where you leave a note, gone for groceries, look for me if I'm not back in 3 hours. And I think that's everybody's kind of like, whoa, I miss the old days.
Yeah, for sure. And we've got to think about compliance too. And we heard that loud and clear from our producers that they're worried about regulation creep. They're worried about control. They have lost trust with CFIA. And, we've got cases and examples with the TB investigation where they were treated like criminals instead of incentivized through the process. And we can't have that. If we're expected to step up and do more regulation, then we need a regulatory body that's willing to step up and do their job. And we're calling them to do that. And right now, we don't feel they are. And so SCA is pushing hard on them for some reform, for some change, and understanding that we've got commerce, we've got a business to run. And they often forget that you shut down our business for a short time, it's affecting us by the millions. And so, an industry approach, I think, would be very important for traceability. Let's have some tangible benefits for our producers, whether it be market-driven or maybe it's technology-driven. Maybe there's some technology in the process that adds value to our operations. I don't know what that is, but hopefully the people in this task force can figure that out.
If you weren't an association leader, someone else was going to step up to the plate and do it. And so anyone who steps up to the plate to be a leader, it takes a lot of gumption and grit and relatively a thick skin because not everyone's going to agree with you. And you've had your fair share of comments thrown your way that are not so nice. But, I think if we take a step back just for a quick moment to really truly understand, I'm hearing you loud and clear. And it's like, you're doing this yourself. Why? Have some compassion for someone who's in the leadership position, who's stepping up to the plate to speak. We can't all step up and say the same thing to the government. Someone has to. And so I'm just curious, what got you to this place where you said, yes, I want to be an association leader? What got you to this place where you wanted to be more involved to represent an industry that you are a part of?
I've been in industry, cowboy politics, I call it, or cattlemen's politics for close to 20 years now. And it's right in our mission statement that we support our industry, we support our community, we support our youth, and we support our church. And if you don't give back to your industry that you're in, it's really hard to bitch about it. So that's part of what we do is give back to our industry. My dad was also president of the Saskatchewan Stock Growers Association. My great-grandfather was one of the founding members of Saskatchewan Wheat Pool back in the day. And so I guess it goes back in the genetics fairly far that this is a mindset that we got to protect our industry, and this is a way to do it by serving on these boards.
Good job. Good for you for being a part of that legacy that your family obviously believes in, and it is important to give back to your industry. So, okay. So, Lacey, did you have any further questions around our whole topic for today is the control issue part, like the regulator, the rancher? Where else did you want to take this conversation?
It's important to know that we're heard. How can producers know that they are being heard, and maybe not necessarily by the SCA, like it sounds like you've made an effort to make sure they're heard, but how do they know that Ottawa's hearing them?
That's always a
If we've
challenge.
lost so much faith.
That's right. And they have lost faith in our cattlemen's associations, and that's blunt because, we've been working behind the scenes on a lot of this for the last 16 years. And like I say, I wasn't there, but I'm here now. And so I'm the one taking the brunt of the comments and on both sides of the issues. I've got people on both sides of the issues that are calling me on this, but the far majority in Saskatchewan are cow-calf producers and are very concerned about these regulations. But, as far as SCA, I encourage our producers to get to our district meetings. That's what gives us direction. Give us resolutions that we need to follow as an organization. They use their checkoff dollars for advocacy and communication. So that's the first part. Call your board members. Have conversations with them. And we did get a lot of calls. I got hundreds of calls in the last while over traceability. Talk to your MPs, your MLAs. We also have 4 Canadian Cattle Association representatives from Saskatchewan. And they are great people. They are industry leaders, and they are there to represent our industry the best they can. So give them a call, talk to them, give them your thoughts, and ask them the why. That's important to have them understand the why in some cases of what we're looking at from the association view.
Right. Yeah. I mean, kind of just like anything, whether it's the school board where your kids go to school or this, like if you have to get involved.
So working with the team every day, completely in a different industry, in the financial industry, what's helpful is if you're going to bring up a problem is also come up with a solution. So what are some of the solutions that have been brought forth, and do a lot of those solutions make sense? Or is it just completely emotional? Like, hey, I just don't want to be told what to do.
No, I think through this discussion, there's been lots of ideas come forth, and this task force will bring that to light, I hope. We've put forward some very powerful names on both sides of the issue to go forward and work on this task force. And yeah, we've got options, and we can look at other countries on how they do it. We can enhance our technology. I think now that there is some profitability in the cow-calf sector of our industry, now we can start putting money into technology that'll help us. Our farmer friends have had more opportunity for that than we've had just because of margins in our business. And now that maybe we can put some money towards technology, I think there's all kinds of GPS tags that are helping us with calving and sickness and heat detection and those types of things. And who knows where the technology is going to go. And this might aid in traceability down the road to where a producer, it's not onerous at all. Just put the tag in. So ideas like that. We've got to work on CFIA as well. We've got to work on our regulatory body, like I said, and we've got to bring them to the table as a partner. And if we're going to step up, they need to too, and work with us along the way on this traceability. And we're also wanting some changes and some work done on CCIA and the CLTS system to make sure that is trusted and private, like we've been told, and make sure that the work's being done there. So privacy is a big concern of our producers as well. And so we've got to check those boxes for them and make sure that we're asking the right questions in our associations.
Yeah, I think that is like privacy is a huge concern when we feel like everybody has to know everything about us. And at what point can you just have some privacy?
What's funny about this comment is just making me think like I'm hearing like the younger generations now, they want to go back to CD players and tape players and, all this sort of stuff. The pendulum feels like it's swinging the other way,
It is, because like even our oldest son in the last little while, he's just like, I'm just so tired of my phone. And he said, everybody expects an instant answer. They want your location on Snap Maps. His words were, I am just so tired.
That's right. And, our phones know a lot about us that we have. And I'll have a conversation about something, and then all of a sudden it's popping up on my social media. And so that's scary. That's very scary.
Yeah.
And I think it sure would be nice to leave the phone and go back to the time when I managed a sales force of 25 people across Western Canada in the early 90s without a cell phone. There's no cell phones.
Right.
And it was payphones and hotel rooms is when we
Yeah.
visit. And
Oh man.
so
Yeah,
what
yeah,
a
yeah.
change from that and to where now everything's so instant. And it is mind-boggling and it is draining.
It's always tough to walk that fine line again, where like everything you guys are all trying to accomplish in terms of like traceability and regulation and honoring privacy. That's a tough combination. And it's probably never going to be possible that everyone's going to agree and not everyone's going to be happy. But bless you for actually helping to be the face of taking on that challenge as a spokesperson. That can't be easy at all.
I heard it said where traceability itself is important and beneficial. It's the regulation and the implementation is where the concerns lie. And how do we do that? And and how do we get that done so everyone wants to do it and that type of thing. So
it's my understanding there is a halt right now. So what's next? What can we expect?
Well, what we're lobbying for is that this group that we're putting together, this traceability working group task force, will come up with solutions that will be industry-led. And we're hoping that CFIA listens. Now, they could implement these tomorrow, and it could go to Gazette 2 and then move forward with these regulations. And they don't have to stop because of us. But we're hoping that because of our concerns that we've put forward, that they are listening and that we can have an industry-led traceability.
So if they don't listen and things go ahead, then we're just stuck with it? Is that what it is?
If they want to, they can. I hope they don't. I don't think they will from the concerns they have, but they've got to consider compliance too, because if they just go ahead at this point, compliance within our cow-calf producers will be low. And so, we've got to show the producers benefit, whether it's through markets or technology or whatever, that this is something that they want to do and is important to their operations.
Before this conversation ends, what I'm curious about is is part of the problem here financial? How does it impact y'all financially the way it is right now? Is it, because it's not a matter, is this just really about control and privacy, or is this also a financial matter?
I would say no, because the financial impact has already hit our industry, and that's with the tags. That's the biggest financial impact that we have. Now, if we are to have the regulations go into place, you will have to purchase a scanner. If you buy a bull or bred heifers or bred cows or whatever, and you can scan those animals and upload it to the CLTS. Or you can write them down on a piece of paper and input it on the computer or your phone too. So there's those options as well. So cost is a scanner. They range from $700 to $35,000, $4,000, whatever you want to get. There is some government funding. I know on ours, we got half of ours paid for, 50% here in Saskatchewan. So that cuts that down by quite a bit. But yeah, as far as cost, the scanner is the big one. And then your time. Most operations do run their cattle through. If they buy a herd bull or bred cows, they brand them anyway. So it's not hard to scan that tag and load that. So I'd say probably it's not the biggest hindrance for our producers is cost.
Okay. Yeah. So I think this has been a good conversation and shedding light on the main concern for producers is control. And at what point, if we give them an inch, do they take a mile? And then if that happens, is there any turning back? A lot of times there's no turning back. So the control, but speaking up, I think it's really good to hear from you. Get involved, speak up, make sure you're making those phone calls, maybe sending those emails, talking to your representatives. Could they enforce these regulations? Yes. But I guess, like you said, you can't bitch about it if you didn't voice your opinion or, your concern.
Yeah. And part of it, taking control as producers, what we can do is taking control of our finances. We can do what we can do within our own operations to protect ourselves in case of a reportable disease outbreak. So, we can in-house, we can keep track of the cattle we buy. We can keep track. I know Crystal and I, a lot of operations don't, but we scan our steers out and we scan our cull cows out. And we started doing that because we sent a load of cull cows to be slaughtered and there was a mix-up at the plant and we got paid for the wrong cows. Well, we could justify which cows we sent because we had read those cows out. So that's just something that we do. But I just encourage producers to just take control and keep good records on their own operations, and just like you do with your finances.
Right.
And that'll help you in the long run.
Yeah, well, question just like maybe to add a little bit of like comfort, I guess. So say something came up and you needed to trace back and see which cow. How long would it take you to look it up? Like, are we talking minutes, an hour?
Within my own operation, I guess that'd be a question for Crystal. That's on her docket. But she keeps track of all that, and she does work with the CLTS and uploads all our information and scans all our cattle. So I would think she would have that probably in hours, not minutes.
Right. Yeah, and like you said, like taking control of your own operation and that traceability within that even is similar to taking control of your finances. And I think I had this conversation this morning with the clients. Like, adulting is not always fun, but if you do think every choice we make, and then this is coming from Winnie, in our finances, this is the conversation I had, every little small financial choice leads to the end goal. And so you can, I guess, relate that to traceability too. Every small little, if I'm buy 50 bred heifers and I'm branding them anyway, if I scan them in, it's really adding maybe 5 seconds onto that job. And those little things can compound into simplifying a problem if it were to arise down the road. I mean, obviously we hope to not have disease show up, but if it does, so yeah. I think it's been good to shed light on it for even me as a producer, for sure.
Listening into this conversation, I think whether you're on one side of the coin or the other, it just feels like y'all want the same thing, which is being in this business sustainably. It feels like you guys want the same things. Maybe just don't agree on the way you guys go about it. That's it.
I would think so. If I wasn't born on this land, but Reed's family is my family, and whatever we can do to protect what Grandma Lizzie started in 1910, and if our kids want to continue on, it's like how can we make that possible? And like you, Chad, like since 1906, that's huge, and it's not just like a piece of land. It means something. And it's like, just last night, I was moving some cows across the road, and it's like, okay, at first it's like, what do you mean? Like, am I going to have to report to them every time I move cattle? And that was a fear that some people had, right?
Yeah.
So I think there's, can we meet in the middle somewhere?
And it's kind of like in your book, you talk about the arrival syndrome. And, if we feel that we've arrived, you're not willing to grow. And so, I'm just saying in our operations that we've got to keep looking at ways that we can grow and do better.
So just if you don't know what the arrival syndrome is, if any of you have had a teenager or was once a teenager, which we know what the arrival syndrome is. It's like when you're talking to someone who just knows it all.
Yeah.
That's the arrival syndrome.
Yeah, and Nelson talks about that in his book. So, yeah, I think it's good. Like in ways like in this too, agriculture, farming, ranching. Sometimes I feel like people who are not in the industry do not view it as a business, as like a brick and mortar that you see in town. But it is a business, and we have to run it like it's a business. And if we don't, well, you're going to end up tits up, as I would say. So if we don't treat it like a business and we're not always looking for ways to improve, we're just going to be stagnant.
That's right. I took the Ranching for Profit course there. I actually took it twice, and they talk about working on the business or working in the business. And, which one are you? And as our operations consolidate and get larger, and we're seeing that, especially across Western Canada, we've got to be working on the business a lot. And we can get caught in the trenches working in the business because there's lots to do. There's lots to do every day. But we've got to make sure that we're working on the business too.
Well, Winnie and I even have a rule adopted. Like Mondays and Fridays, we work on the business. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, we meet with clients. If we're not working on the business, pretty soon,
there's no business.
we're missing deadlines, or there's just no business.
There's got to be a space in any business where you can be proactive, which is working on the business. And there's got to be some space for being able to react to what you need to do in the business, right? A balance of both.
And we're going to tie that into a financial conversation too, about being proactive rather than always being in a reactive state. And so, was there anything else, Chad, that you wanted to add to this conversation?
I think so. And I think we're good. We've listened to producers. We've heard what they said. We've heard the concerns. And now, like we've said, it's working on what the outcome of that is and how that looks going forward. And hopefully we can get things in place where it's not onerous for our producers.
Winnie, any closing thoughts?
Thank you for being here with us today, Chad, and being so open and gracious with your time, taking time out of your business and your day, and stepping up to be a leader in your industry and doing the best that you absolutely can. I'm grateful to be here with you.
Yeah, so if you are a beef producer in Canada, your call to action on this episode, find out who your board members are, make those phone calls, send those emails, speak up, fight for your right to be a producer. Because if you're not being heard, you can't expect the results that you want. So be bold, speak up, head over to our website, rancherway.com. Your first step in exploring what we do here with farmers and ranchers is purchasing the book. So you're going to get paperback copy and audio version of Farming Without the Bank. rancherway.com. You can watch us on YouTube, listen on iHeartRadio, Spotify, or Apple Podcast. See you in the next episode.
So glad you leaned in with us on the Winnie podcast. We truly hope you're feeling more informed and empowered to take another step towards optimizing your financial life. Right now, make sure you hit subscribe so you can keep growing and learning with us. Until next time, we wish you prosperity in every area of your life.